So hello everyone, I am Shuning Su, the Community Manager of Threat Modeling Connect, or TMC as many of us like to call it. Welcome to the opening ceremony of Threat Modeling Hackathon 2025. This hackathon is all about collaboration, learning, and growth in threat modeling. So whether you are a seasoned expert or brand new to this space, you are in the right place. We've built this event to be a supportive, fun, and engaging experience, and we're so glad, so excited that you're here. So here's what we have lined up today. I have some quick announcements to share with you. Then we have a special treat. Abby Dolan will be giving a keynote. Yay! Expect something fun and exclusive just for you, our hackathon participants. Next, our judging panel, led by Stephen Wakes, will review the hackathon prompts, and they will also share some valuable advice to set you up for success. Finally, I'm going to wrap up with some reminders on event logistics to make sure that you have everything you need to get started. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to introduce Threat Modeling Connect, or TMC, the global community behind this hackathon. At TMC, we are on a proud mission to secure the software and systems that run the modern world by building security in from day one through threat modeling and secure by design practices. We host events year-round, of course, including this hackathon, which is the industry's largest hackathon dedicated to threat modeling. We also have now twice a year our global conference, ThreatModCon, stands for Threat Modeling Conference, the world's only conference dedicated fully to threat modeling. It's twice a year in US and Europe. Our first events coming up, first ThreatModCon coming up is going to be next month in Barcelona. And then we have our US edition in Washington, DC in November. So hope to see you there, either or even both. Beyond our global conferences, we are growing our local chapters in cities like London, Tokyo, and Barcelona. And just last month, we launched our very first German-speaking chapter, the TMC DACH. More chapters are on the way in Vienna, Toronto, Vienna, Toronto, Seattle, and New York City. So if you're near any of these cities, stay tuned. And of course, TMC isn't just about events. Our online forum is where members connect, discuss, and share their experience, their expertise, their challenges, their success year-round, no matter where you are. Excitingly, the output of this hackathon will be featured in the TMC forum. It's a great place, great opportunity to showcase your hard work and your insight and everything that you produce from this event. So that's a quick snapshot of TMC. On behalf of the entire community, again, I'm very excited to welcome all of you to our biggest event of the year, the Threat Modeling Hackathon. If this is your first TMC event, congratulations, because there's no better time to join our community than during our annual hackathon. This is our third year bringing the community together to do threat modeling, not just talking about threat modeling, as the Threat Modeling Manifesto put it, action is key. Each year, we are breaking our own records. I remember I think it's since our first events, that's 2 years ago, the participation hasn't just doubled or tripled, it's grown nearly fourfold. So this year, we have 50 teams, over 50 teams, and more than 250 security professionals joining us from all over the world with one shared goal, which is to become better threat modelers than we are today. And that's what drives this event. That's why so many in our community step up to support this event as judges, mentors, speakers, trainers. These incredible professionals volunteer their time. We'll introduce them later. They generously sharing their expertise because they believe in this mission that the more we grow as practitioners, the stronger our industry becomes, and the more secure and reliable the software and system that we all protect will become. This event wouldn't be possible without our amazing sponsors. So I wanted to take the time to give a big shout outs to Arius Risk, as a community and event sponsor. Iris Risk makes security design standard scalable practice for all digital teams, making security design fast, reliable, and accessible even to non-security users, thanks to their automated and AI-augmented threat modeling solution. They cannot wait to see what you will build over the next 2 weeks. And if you'd like to learn more about effectively mitigating risk, feel free to connect with the Iris Risk team after this hackathon. Our another event sponsor, ShowStack Associates. So Adam founded ShowStack Associates to help everyone threat model more and better. Today, their team is helping companies around the world learn and manage to deliver more secure systems faster and with less friction. Adam and his team are around the hackathon and would love to help you. Again, a big thank you to Iris Risk and ShowStack Associates for making this event possible. Now, without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our keynote speaker, Avi Dolan. Avi is one of the world's top threat modeling experts and trainers, co-author of the Threat Modeling Manifesto, and has been with TMC since day one as a founding member. He is incredibly passionate about this hackathon, not just as a mentor and judge in past years, but as someone who truly believes in the power of hands-on learning. Today, he's here to share something special and something directly applicable to all of you as hackathon participants. His goal is to help you maximize this experience, make the most out of this event, and become a better threat modeler than you are today. So please join me in welcoming Avi Dolan.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Shuning. Can you let me share screen?
Absolutely.
Go.
Over to you, Avi.
All right. Here we go. I think Shuning went a little bit overboard on some of that, but thank you very much for that. It was very kind. So as you know, today is April 1st, and in keeping with the customary April Fool's Day, Shuning asked me to let everybody know that this is all just a massive prank. There's actually no hackathon actually happening. No, I'm just kidding. April Fool's, of course. But that is actually our theme today. And we're going to talk about being foolish, because there's a lot of foolishness going on in the world of threat modeling. Some of it is good, some of it is not. We often say there's no one right way to do threat modeling, but there are actually a lot of ways that are not the right way. So I want to talk a little bit about the foolishness that goes on in threat modeling and in secure design in general. So the first thing that I think everybody needs to know, as I'm sure you coming in here, you know that threat modeling is a very deeply technical activity. Just kidding, that's the second April Fool's joke of the day. It's not actually a technical activity. And I might be saying a few things that are a little bit controversial, but this is my theme for today. We're talking about the parts that are not just controversial. Sorry. With that being said, let's talk about that. You know, I've already proven my authority by superior use of superior humor, but I'm actually not here as an authority. I'm here as the person who got lost in the forest slightly before you. So I'm going to point out a few of my mistakes. You know, I do product security consulting at a small boutique called Balance Security, a very active in the TM Connect community and in OWASP and a few other communities as well. OWASP Israel, the Security Stack Exchange is a great resource. I'm also an accidental co-author of the Threat Modeling Manifesto. If you haven't read the Threat Modeling Manifesto yet, I suggest when all this is done, take 7 minutes, go to threatmodelingmanifesto.org and read through it twice. It doesn't take long, but it gives you a really good target of what we're talking about and where we're going. And as one of the co-authors, I am going to steal freely from the manifesto because I'm sure that there are a bunch of people here that haven't really heard about threat modeling before they signed up for the hackathon. So what is this big thing called threat modeling? Well, stealing from the manifesto. Here's a quick definition. Threat modeling is analyzing representations of a system to highlight concerns about security and privacy characteristics. The emphasis here is mine. This short little definition took about the 15 of us about 3.5 weeks to define because there's so many different meanings to threat modeling. Just real quick, I want to point out this security and privacy. We usually focus on the security, also cover other aspects such as privacy, and you're probably going to hear quite a bit about that later on. Highlight concerns. It doesn't mean list out all the possible vulnerabilities that you have in your system. It means focus on the things that you're concerned about, the things that you want to do something about. And we're talking about representations. We're not scanning live systems. It could be a model, a diagram, some form of abstraction, some higher level thinking about the system. So this is what threat modeling is. And I mean, there's a lot of great in-depth trainings, and you can have a short workshop after this with Robert Holba, one of the best trainers out there. Definitely worth joining, and you're going to hear a lot about how to do threat modeling. And it comes down to basically answering four questions. Adam Shostak put this together, and we adopted this for the manifesto as well. And basically, it comes down to answering, what are we working on? What is the system? How do the components work? How do they interface with each other? How do the pieces work in depth? What can go wrong? These are the threats, the concerns, the pieces that you want to fix. What are we going to do about it? Arguably the most important part of threat modeling. We're here not just to write nice, big, fancy documents, but to make our systems more secure. And I'm taking a loose interpretation of the fourth question. Did we do a good enough job? Right? It's about getting the right fine tuning, about having the right effort involved. And Robert's going to go into a lot of depth about the mechanisms of how to do threat modeling, how to think about threat modeling. But for today, I want you to focus a little bit more on how to feel about threat modeling. So, story time. I'm going to tell you about the one time that I was actually a fool. Yeah, one time. Um, so a while ago, I was actually invited to join in a potluck dinner. Everybody brings your own dish and everybody cooks and everybody brings, and you get this massive buffet of a lot of different things. You get to eat from a lot of dishes, and it's a lot of fun when you do it with friends. And they're absolutely fantastic. And I was going to show off. I made frijoles refritos, what Americans call refried beans. Really good, rich and creamy, savory with just a little bit of heat. Fantastic with any kind of burrito or any kind of fried chicken. It goes great with any meat dish. We're fantastic. So I showed up really proud of myself, as I tend to be. Um, and I found out what everybody else already knew, but I never bothered finding out. This was not a potluck dinner. This was potluck dessert. And as it turns out, spicy bean mash doesn't go really well with triple fudge brownies or cookies, and everybody else just brought these amazing sweets and pastries, and it doesn't really go that well with all these really sweet, rich things. Um, yeah, so I kind of screwed up on that. It also doesn't go well with trifle. Trifle is another really interesting dish. You have a lot of different layers, a lot of different components. They all need to actually work well together, integrate component. And what actually went wrong with this situation, right? Going to talk about what went wrong with threat modeling. Well, I never actually asked. I never found out what we're actually having. What's our purpose? Is it dinner? Is it dessert? What is everybody else cooking? And for that matter, I didn't even ask if there's any allergies, any other food constraints, any vegans in the crowd. Does it need to be kosher? Well, it was. But I never actually found out what our purpose is. Quick takeaways. Always ask, what are we doing here? What's our purpose? What are we trying to achieve? What else are we having? What else is going on? Are there any other constraints that we need to be thinking about? And what's our end goal? Story time. Let me tell you about the one time that I was actually a fool. A long time ago, I used to be a consultant. Well, I still am a consultant, but I used to get paid to show up to clients and threat model their systems for them. I still do that, but I do it very differently because this one time, a few years ago, I was working with a client who's developing a security product for organizations. I don't need to go into the details, but it was a really interesting product, and I made a really amazing threat model. I got into so much detail. I took 2 months to come back with a massive Excel sheet. I think there must have been 350 lines in that, and it was really impressive. A work of art, if I may say so myself. And the client, obviously was suitably impressed because I did so much research. I reverse engineered some of these protocols and the edge cases, things that you never even think about. But I got into that. I found all those things. And they did absolutely nothing with this absolutely impressive threat model. It was simply useless. It was too much. It was not aligned with them. So they were impressed. It was great. As they say, the surgery succeeded, but the patient died. It didn't really help. So what went wrong here? Well, this was a massive threat model, great details, but it was not aligned with what they actually needed. I ignored the context. I ignored the other stakeholders. I ignored the workflow. I didn't integrate with what is actually needed with what is actually going on. Talking about useless threat models, I like to misquote George Box, a known statistician, who didn't actually say all threat models are wrong, some are useful. Now, here, the important part is to ignore the everything is wrong, but to focus on the useful part. If you can create a threat model that's actually useful, don't worry about being comprehensive and 100% correct. You never will be. It doesn't matter. What's important is that the output of this threat modeling exercise actually makes your product more secure, that you actually bring some value. Keep the value in mind when you are threat modeling, when you're trying to produce an output here. For those of you not familiar with this nice little diagram here, we love diagrams, right? This is actually a sketch of a World War II bomber. And, the Allied effort, 25% of the Air Force was being shot down. So they wanted to put more armor on the planes, except you can't put armor on the whole plane. It'd be too heavy, too slow, too expensive. It'd be like flying a tank. That's not particularly useful. So what they did, like what any good engineer does, is they start collecting data and they start marking down every plane that came back. They start marking down where the planes get shot, where they get exploded, bullet holes and flak and all that stuff. And this is really good, statistically significant markings of where the planes get shot. And just before they were about to layer on all that extra armor onto wherever these bullet holes are, I mean, that makes sense. You put the protection where you get shot. A statistician by the name of Abraham Vold showed up and pointed out that they were falling into one of history's greatest blunders. Never get into a land war in Asia. No, the other one. It's known as survivor's bias. They were only looking at the planes that came back. Instead of worrying about the ones that didn't make it, they were worried about getting shot. Nobody cares if you get shot. Nobody cares if you get scanned. What matters is if those are fatal. What you care about is all the places that the planes got shot and did not survive, did not make it back long enough to be patched up, refueled, and sent back out with the new staff. So this is a perfect mapping of the places where you don't need to put extra armor on because the plane will survive. It's important to always focus on what actually matters. What is the most important part that we have here? So quick takeaways. Align with your business need. What is the prerogative? What is the focus? What is the purpose that we're trying to drive here? What are we trying to achieve? What is the value that we're trying to protect or create? Always consider it in context. There are many layers of context that you might be worried about that you need to take into consideration, both on the business level, on the technical level, on the human level. And you always have to make the output of that threat model, make it actionable. If you produce a threat model, fantastic Excel sheet with 350 things without anything of saying, well, actually, go fix these 3 things right now. That's the most important thing. Always make it actionable. And always think about how your process will integrate with everybody else that is doing part of the system, right? Whether it's the developers, the architects, the people that are selling your product, they also need to be able to do this. The users, everybody needs to be involved in that. Now, I said at the very beginning that threat modeling wasn't just a technical exercise. And the threat modeling manifesto explicitly calls this out. A good threat modeling practice says it's a culture of finding and fixing design issues. More important than checkbox compliance, more important than the technical aspect. The most important part is the culture. Culture is always a social aspect. Ain't no such thing as a culture of computers. There's always a culture. Not getting into biological germs and warfare. They even go further. The manifesto even goes further and is very, very explicit. People and collaboration are much more important than the process, methodologies, and tools. Those are important too. How you do it, the mechanics is important. But the people and the collaboration, that is what makes it much better, more powerful. That is the important thing. Part of the manifesto group also created a set of capabilities and threat modeling capabilities model. And it's linked on the same site, /capabilities. You see the link down there. And there's a whole section around communication. Having different capabilities of good, powerful communication will make your threat modeling practice that much better, will take you to the next level. And things like positive reinforcement, focusing on people skills, constructive conversations. I remember this one time I was teaching threat modeling to a bunch of developers and architects, and the chief architect was in the room and was really upset. Why are we wasting our time? My architects, the product managers, they do this already anyway. And then they start looking, the product managers and the other architects in the room start looking at each other. It's like, we never actually drew that kind of diagram. We never actually talked about this like that. We never actually, should we be doing that? Are you doing that? And they never actually sat down to talk about it and to communicate about it. So not only is communication an important part of threat modeling helps that communication. And at that point, of course, that chief architect turned around and his entire demeanor changed. And he's like, proceed, because he realized how powerful communicating about what the system actually does. Almost every time I go into an organization and start doing threat modeling with them, simply drawing a diagram of how the system actually works, the architect or the product manager will define how the system works. And the developer in the back of the room is like, that's not how I built it, or that's not what that component does. Having that communication is incredibly important. Interestingly, outside the category of communication, the capabilities model in all the other categories also talks about things like communication, like integrating into your workflow, talking to people, active collaboration, fostering additional participation, focusing on the value-driven part of the system, aligning with other people, collaborating. All this stuff is super important to part of your threat modeling. Quick takeaways. Focus on the human side of the equation. It's not just a technical exercise. If you're sitting with your hoodie up in your basement, surfacing up a month and a half later, 2.5 months later with a massive Excel sheet, you're going to miss out on everything else. We're here for the human side of it. It is not just a technical scan of the system. It's understanding everybody else's perspective. And to do that, you need to be inclusive of everybody else, of the other stakeholders, of the people who are sitting quietly in the back of the room and don't want to participate. And you need to work together. This is a team sport. It's not if you do a threat model by yourself, you might come up with a bunch of good results, but it will never be as powerful as it is integrated with a full team, because it is about that shift in mindset of everybody understanding and seeing each other. And interestingly enough, and I discovered this way later than I'm proud to admit, empathy is like a cheat code to build trust with people. It's hard to get people to admit of how they built something different from what it was supposed to be, or not ideal, or not what is expected, without empathy. Empathy to everybody else. Developers going through a hard time. There's a lot of pressure. Architects are cutting corners. Everybody has their own constraints. And empathy to that will get them on the same page to build trust that we're doing this together as a team. And we're not coming in to tell you what you did wrong. We're here to build a better system together. Now, communication isn't just important for threat modeling. Threat modeling, as Brooke Schoenfeld once said, threat modeling is a form of communication itself. It helps you focus what you're going to be discussing, what you're going to be implementing, how you're going to be implementing it, why we agreed to something. And I don't know about you folks, I tend to be very senile, so remembering what I did, 3 weeks down the line or 6 months from now, I'm not going to remember what I decided. The threat model, the output of that, helps us understand why we decided to do a thing. Not to mention how useful this is to communicate with everybody else, other teams, your clients, partners, auditors, everybody else. So if the threat model is a form of communication, turns out that readability and usability of the output of how you construct that is actually super important. Again, that 350-line Excel sheet, that was not readable. That will take days just to parse out anything important. So please, when you put together a threat model, and I'm not just talking about the hackathon right now, I'm talking about in general, when you create a threat model, I don't even know how the scoring will be done. I'm sure Stephen will jump in soon to say how that scoring will be, but the readability, the parsability of that output is super important. There's a really cool quote by a really cool fellow that mentioned security at the expense of usability comes at the expense of security. Remember, if you are super 100% aiming for complete, you might not be quite as useful and usable as you might hope. Quick takeaways before I leave you with one last thought. Always be mindful of the user experience. In this case, the user of your threat model is who's ever receiving it, who's ever parsing it, who's ever reading it, right? When you write, you're not writing for a computer, you're not writing for yourself, you're writing for whoever is reading it. For the hackathon, that's the judges. Have mercy on them. They don't have to go through 5,000 data points just to get to the point of how good your actual threat model is. 50 times over, we said something like 50 teams was that? Keep that in mind. Output is important. The output of the threat model is static, but even more important is trying to understand the thought process that went into that, how you got to those conclusions, how you created that. And the big difference between a good threat model and a great one, much like with superheroes, supervillains, is presentation. There's a reason that Michelin star chefs work very hard at their plating, right? That spicy bean mush looks like a brown pile of that's not fancy. Nobody wants to eat that. On the other hand, having fancy crap isn't good either. So presentation to wrap well thought out results is important. I do want to leave you with one last thought real quick before I wrap up, is that I have mentioned, sorry, sorry. I want to leave you with one last thought. I mentioned being a fool, and sometimes that's a good thing. You can leverage this to great extent if you leave your humility outside. Sometimes you walk into the room and you can play the fool. The reason is this can be very useful. The reason we're here is to learn from each other. If you come in and you're the smartest person in the room, nobody's going to speak up and inform you that actually you're mistaken. We're there to learn from each other, to learn from each other's perspectives, to learn how everybody else sees the system, to be able to understand what that great big elephant in the room that we're talking about is, right? Asking questions will help you discover those cognitive biases that you don't even know about, having people ask you those questions. Open-ended questions are great when you don't know what you're looking for. But if you're looking for details, you might want to think about the Reddit syndrome. The Reddit syndrome, right? You show up on Reddit, ask for tech support, configuring my sound card for Linux, and nobody will give you, you'll get you'll get nothing, crickets for days. But if you drop a comment of, oh, Linux sucks, it doesn't support my sound card, you will get detailed, very detailed guidelines within moments of how to configure that. Because when people see a mistake, they want to correct it. So playing the fool is even if you are explicit and admit it up front, people are still feel forced to correct you and help you. And there's a really counterintuitive trick. Having a bad diagram, an ugly diagram, is actually super useful, because if you have a very polished, gorgeous diagram while you're trying to have a discussion with people, they're not going to come forward. They're just going to glaze over. Oh, it's so pretty. But if you show up with a really ugly diagram, people are going to be very critical about it and say, hey, you missed a whole bunch of stuff there. And they're going to show up. And that are the very ugliness invites challenge. Challenge leads to learning. And that is what we want. Quick takeaways, and then I'm going to wrap up. Always be learning. That's what we're here for. The only way to do that, check your ego at the door, question each other. You don't know the answers to it. That's why you're asking the questions. Challenge each other's assumptions. Find them. Find your own assumptions, challenge them, and that is how you learn. Because once you turn an assumption to be explicit, you've just defined your requirements, and that's a good thing. Be flexible in your thinking and in your techniques, whatever actually works. And my takeaway is really simple. Turns out we're all still fools. We're all still learning. We don't actually know. Every time you show up to a potluck dinner, make sure you ask. Make sure you find out what the constraints are. What are we trying to achieve? What are other people doing? Be considerate of them. If you ask the undereducated to provide their input, they're actually going to lead to a path of enlightenment and guiding themselves and each other to a better result. It's okay to be the greater fool as long as we keep learning. This entire industry was built by greater fools. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Abby. That is so good. Thank you so
I'm
much.
gonna leave the all the takeaways up on screen for 1 second if y'all want that.
Great idea. And we'll also be sharing a recording of this with all of you after this as well. So if you don't get to get a screenshot, don't worry about it. All right, I am going to pull my screen back up. Now it's time for one of the most anticipated moment of the hackathon, the official prompt announcement. To do the honors, I would like to hand it over to Stephen Wakes, the chief judge of the Hackathon 2025, who will reveal this year's challenge. So Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shuning. All right, so for this year, we try to do something slightly different than from previous years, because we also like to keep evolving the challenge and make sure that it keeps being interesting, both for threat modelers with a lot of knowledge and people who are completely new in threat modeling. So this year, we have a smart transportation solution for which you can download the complete description from the link. I'm on purpose not going to go into detail of this description at this moment in time. However, in a couple of slides, you will get all the Slack channels where you can ask questions, should there be any questions. The important part in this description is that it should be clearly noted that you don't need to create a threat model on everything that is described. You can threat model only part of the system. So you can threat model something that you already know, something that you know nothing about. Whatever you want to threat model, there should be something in this description for you to threat model as a team. Now, we're doing a hackathon, so it's, let's say, at the end, it's a game. And the judges need to be able to judge something. So yeah, you will need to deliver us a threat model in any kind of a format. And also, potentially even more interesting than a threat model itself, a retrospective. What did you learn? Well, what are things that are new to you so that you can, it will help you think about these things. It will help consolidate, make explicit the things that you learned. As Avi already mentioned, it's a little bit of a game, this threat model. So yeah, we are going to judge on a bunch of criteria. And even though Avi and I did not talk about his keynote, many of the things that you have heard him say are going to be reflected here. So yes, we want you to take the context into account. There is a clear description of the context that you should envision you being the threat modeler in, because that will potentially make a huge difference. We want to see some representations of the system. So since I'm going to guess most teams are not going to make a complete threat model, yeah, we will need to see the scope that you are threat modeling. So some kind of a diagram might be useful. It might be more useful to depict it in another way, but we need to see, of course, what is which part of the system did you actually threat model? We need to see some kind of an analysis. Here we're trying to mimic real life. Like Avi said, you need to write down how you did your analysis. How did you come to certain conclusions? Because in a couple of months, otherwise you won't remember. But in this case, we are sort of abusing this thing that you need to do anyway, because it will give us as judges insight into how you came to certain conclusions. Two teams might find the same threat and score it completely differently, and they might both be right. Both teams might be correct. Depends a bit on the argumentation that you give. The description, the prompt, is fairly open in order to give people the chance to come up with a lot of things, which also means that this is not a capture the flag. There are no flags. There is not one correct solution, as there never is in a threat model. You never know beforehand whether your threat model is going to be the best threat model ever or it's going to be good enough. Now, the two last points, also already mentioned by Avi, you need to report things and you need to present them. I don't really care how you present them. A huge Excel file might not be the best readable, but if you want to record a musical and sing the results to me, I'm perfectly okay with this. I mean, it's perfectly okay to be creative. The hackathon is the place where you can try out these things. You don't want to try that out at your job probably, but in the hackathon, that's definitely going to be useful. As a side note, every team that delivers a threat model will get individual feedback on their threat model. So if you're reporting, you tried something new, put it in your retrospective write-up that this is something new you want to try out as reporting, and we will give you feedback. It's going to be a lot of work for us, but it's a learning experience. So yeah, that's what the judges are there for. That is everything I had so far. One of the reasons we don't go into the detail of the description now is because at this moment in time, not every participant is here either. So you will all be asking questions in the Slack channel. So everyone will receive the answers at the same time as well. It keeps the competitive element as fair as possible as we could make it. So thank you, Shuni, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And like Stephen mentioned, the full system description will be linked in the participants guide, so you can check that out. And we'll share it in just a few slides where you can go about asking questions as you go through the description with your team. So before you dive into the hackathon, we want to make sure that you're set up for success. We're incredibly lucky to have a stellar group of judges this year, including Stephen Wakes, who we just heard from, Irene Micheline, Mohammed Kazim Yarshed, Dave Sordura, Daniel Agoda, and Robert Hurlbut. They've put countless hours into crafting this challenge since January. And they're doing this not only to test or push your skills, but really what we all want for this hackathon is to help you become a better threat modeler than you are today. So before we begin, let's hear a few words of advice from our judges. We'll start with Stephen again and followed by
So the only advice I want to give you, which was not mentioned in the previous slide, is probably the most important one. Again, Avi already hinted at this. Make sure you have fun. Threat modeling that you're going to do here in the hackathon, you're probably going to do that in your free time. It should be fun. You should also learn things, but the main goal is still to at least have some fun, because then you will not lose your appetite for threat modeling, and hopefully you will learn a lot as well.
Thank you, Stephen. All right, don't forget to have fun. Irene, you're up next.
Okay, so a couple of points that probably you will see when you read the document. It describes what tools are allowed, but what I want to make sure it's clear. There isn't a tool out there that if you only crack it, it will give you a winning entry. You can do well in this hackathon and you can win this hackathon with no tools whatsoever. And tools have a learning curve, so make sure you don't spend the limited hackathon time fighting a tool, okay? Because it's not essential for winning. That's one point. Another point I wanted to make, interesting threads live on the trust boundaries. So again, limited time, where do I go first? This is where they live. And also, there is a great article from Adam on inherent threats compared to accidental threats. It's really important to focus on inherent and essential threats for the system description rather than accidental and generic threats. For example, if you decide to pick mobile app as your component for analysis and you're familiar with mobile apps, all mobile apps in the world have a certain level, a certain type of threats. These are less interesting than the threats that are specific to this model. And the last bit is point of view, right? The description will say who you are. So it's a chance to do a role play, to have fun. It's important to have the point of view, who is writing the threat model and who is the audience for threat model. So there will be also guidance in the document, and it's important to stick to these points. That's all from me.
Thank you, Irene. Jason, you're up next.
Yes, I would say before getting started, build some kind of a strategy. Think about prioritizing high impact areas in the system and collaborate with each other during that process. And once it started, think like someone from your point of view, and with the prompt, you would get to know, think about if someone wants to break your system in ways you have never imagined, and kind of don't just look for the obvious ones. Try to find the blind spots, as Evie and Stefan has also mentioned, that challenge your assumptions and push your ideas to the limit. Yeah, pretty much that's it from my side.
Thank you, Jason. Dave, you're up next.
Yeah, I think I wanted to mention breadth and depth, I suppose. So there's always a danger with threat models that you can kind of go in and go too deep on your threat models. You're trying to come up with the craziest of threats, or the most bizarre scenario that you think will be a cool threat to impress a judge, when really the focus should always be on the what is the most probable set of threats that you consider, not always what you can come up with that's possible in your imagination. So that's what I'd say about how deep you should go sometimes. And on the other side is how wide should your threats go? How broad they should be in your coverage. And with that, I would say you always want to make them broad enough that you cover what you think is reasonable. But if you try to make things too broad, you could also end up missing things that are relevant. And the key thing there is to be very clear about your scope. Be very document that really well, so we know what your focus is on, and we'll be able to tell that you've covered that in the right amount of depth and breadth as well. So that was my advice.
Thank you, Dave. Daniel, you're up next. Thank you.
So, hi everyone. I find myself in a difficult situation because everyone else before me basically summed up everything that I could possibly come up with. And this starts already with the keynote. And I was just writing notes on what to highlight. And then one judge came and I had to throw away my notes, and the other one, and oh my God. And then I finally arrived to the greatest highlights that I just come up with, something I was really proud of to communicate to you, and then Dave just killed it. So I think that he summed it up best. What's also important for me. Please try to focus on not only what's in your scope, but also what you leave out. Try to make every assumptions you make transparent. It's very important for us, not just to see and evaluate your threat models, but also to understand how you arrived to that conclusion that these are your threats. Why is one being more important than the other? Why is something not mentioned? Is it not important, or you haven't even felt that that's part of your job to model that system component? So please be transparent about these things. Your work as a whole should make sense as a whole. Yeah, really. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Daniel. Robert, we're probably making your job really hard coming up the last.
I know, right? Well, I would say similar to what Daniel mentioned, everybody else has mentioned a lot of things I was thinking about as well. But I'll also emphasize what Daniel mentioned about understanding how did you arrive at your conclusions. There's a section in the threat model called retrospective that you detail some of your thought patterns and again, why certain threats and not others and so on. And that'll really help for us in understanding, again, your thought process, what you're trying to do when you're putting together your threat model. And that helps us understand it as we read the threat model and understand it. That'll really help us in the work that we're doing as judges. I'm really honored to be, again, a judge this year for the hackathon. Looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Again, it's going to be a fantastic hackathon and really glad to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Robert. Yeah, let's give a virtual big round of applause to all the judges for all the prep work they've done since January to make sure that we had a solid foundations to work on and to create our threat models on. So thank you for all you do. Right. So I am before I wrap up, I'm just going to cover some important event logistics. Start with the timeline, which I assume most of you are probably familiar with by now. We're at the kickoff, and you have the next 13 days to work on your threat model. The submission deadline is next Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. The submission guidelines are included in the participants guide as well. And April 24th, we're gonna come back together again, and that will be our celebration. We're gonna celebrate your achievements, we'll announce top submissions, and we'll hear it again from our judges. So can't wait to see all of the amazing work that you'll produce, and we'll celebrate together during our closing ceremony. Event communication, Slack will be our central hub. So if you are, for whatever reason, you haven't joined our event Slack already, it's in the participants guide as well. So be sure to join our event Slack. We'll use the announcement for event updates reminders. For logistical questions, please post them in Ask Organizers. But for everything else, the prompts, so you read through the system descriptions, the rules, if this tool is allowed or not. For those kind of questions, please post them in prompt questions. While I'm going through this channel, I would encourage you to pull up your Slack, making sure that you have these 4 channels there. You are in all these 4 channels because these will all be really useful for you. If you can't, for whatever reason, can't see one of these, you're not in one of these, you can search for it and just join that channel. And last but not least, we can't celebrate enough, so we don't celebrate enough. So we have this dedicated space just for that, for celebrations, for shout outs. So it's for mentors, and you're free to use this space to give shout outs, encouragement to your teams, and for teams to give shout out to each other, to your team leads that celebrate those collaboration, enjoy this journey together. And one last thing about Slack, if you haven't have your team Slack yet, if you are team lead, we encourage you to set those up for your teams. I think most of the teams have already taken this step, setting up your own private Slack for team channels, for team communications. But of course, if you have other communication channels that your team decide to use, that's totally fine, but it's just, Slack is what we recommend. Let's talk about some essential resources. 2 main files you want to bookmark: the participants guide. Everything you need to know about this event is in there. The system group description, I think it's already been linked to the participants guide. And the resource pack, this is an incredible toolbox curated by our judges. that includes a list of threat modeling training frameworks, libraries, but just note that this is never meant to be an exhaustive list. It's just some good resources that will help you get a strong start. But of course, there are tools that we can't list everything there. But this is going to be really useful if you're new to threat modeling. Speaking of being new, if you are new, you're definitely not alone. In fact, more than half of our participants this year identified as newcomers with less than a year of experience in threat modeling. And that's precisely why we are here. That's why this hackathon exists. We're here to help you grow, to learn in a fun, engaging, and supportive environment. Beyond the resource pack, one of the most valuable assets that each team has is your mentors. We are thrilled to have over 25 mentors joining us this year, and each bringing unique perspective, real-world experience in threat modeling across different industries, products, and roles. Let's give a big round of applause to all of our mentors. Most of you should have met your mentors during last week's meet and greet call. If you hadn't had a chance yet, we strongly recommend your team to reach out to your mentor directly and schedule a call as soon as possible. There's so much you can learn from their experience and expertise, but there's a caveat. As part of the mentor training, we as organizers strictly ask them not to provide direct solutions to the teams. So their role is really there to guide you, to offer pointers, to help you, like I think Robert also mentioned this, to find the answers, arrive at the answers yourselves, and make sure you document how you arrive those conclusions, those answers in your retrospective. Awards. So while the heart of this event is about learning, collaboration, and growth, we thought it would be fun to add an extra layer to the experience with some awards. So we have 3 awards for this hackathon. The first place team will receive 2,500 Amazon voucher and a private access to the Elevation of Privilege game session with Adam Shosek. Second place team will get 1,200 Amazon voucher. Third place team will bring home 750 Amazon voucher, and the vouchers will be shared across all the active members of the awarded team. And that said, we cannot emphasize enough that competition or even awards is never the core of this hackathon. These awards are there simply to recognize, some teams, they are the submissions stand out a little bit over the others, but the real goal of this event is to become a better threat modeler than you are today. And as you will soon find out, or you've already found out, that the participants in each team, so within your team, you're coming from diverse backgrounds and experience levels. So the real fun and a true win of this event is becoming a better threat modeler than you are today. To celebrate this journey, we're excited to be issuing a certificate of completion to all active members of the teams with a complete entry by the deadline. So really cool, something that you may report to your relevant organization to claim your CPE credits, or just a great thing to share on social media, or just frame it because this looks super cool. In the same spirit, all the teams with the complete submissions will be invited to publish your threat models, and they'll be featured in our community's threat model showcase series. Last but not least, can't say this enough. Let's share the wins, give shout outs, and highlight those moments of joys, big or small, throughout the events. 2 ways you can do that. We have this space dedicated for celebration and shout outs on our Slack. And if you want to share this on social media, don't forget to mention Threat Modeling Connect and tag Threat Mod Hack. And before we wrap up, if you're new, this will be new to you, but if you've ever been to any TMC events, we have a tradition to capture the moments with a group Zoom photo. So if you would like to be in this group photo, turn on your camera now, and we'll take the shots in 10 seconds. And as always, my Zoom only allow 50 participants show up at one time. So I think for the size of this event, I am going to take 3 or 4 screenshots. All right, so let's come up with the first one. Ryan's ready. All right, so we'll do the first one. We'll get 4 shots to get everyone in there. Yeah, let's start with the first one. All right, 3, 2, cheese. That's our first one. I'm going to go to the second page. You still have a chance to turn on your camera if you decide to, if you like to. All right, so second photo. 3, 2, 1, say cheese. All right. Third photo. 3, 2, 1, say cheese. And that's our fourth one. 3, 2, 1, say cheese. And I guess I need a final one. 3, 2, 1. Wonderful. All right, so and these are just some of our favorite moments from last year. We cannot wait to see yours. So be sure to use the Slack channel or do the social posts. We'll be gathering these highlights, and so if you have shared your moments with us, you'll have a chance to be featured in our final event recap campaign. That's super fun. Don't miss out. So with that, I want to wish every team good luck, and expect that this journey is you're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn a lot and grow a lot. Stephen also mentioned this, don't forget to have fun. It's super important while you're here. Ready, set, let's go threat model. Thank you everyone for joining us. We have the Developing a Threat Modeling Workshop by Robert Hobart coming up in 2 minutes. Thank you, Jenna. The link is already in the chat. If you want to participate in that workshop, which we highly recommend for all the participants, especially if you're new to threat modeling, we will see you in that Zoom in 2 minutes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good luck. Have fun.